In the last section, we got our Docker container to be aware of changes that are made to our test files by starting up our primary container with Docker Compose, and then kind of piggybacking on that thing using the docker exec command. So we ran docker exec with the container ID, and we executed npm run test inside there. Again, I don't think this is a perfect solution because it requires you to first get a handle on the container ID. So in this section, I'm going to show you a slightly different approach. Now, you might be thinking, Stephen, why are you showing us more than one approach? Why didn't you just show us the second approach to start with if it's so good? Well, the answer is that it's not the perfect solution. So I'm going to show you the second way of solving this, but again, it's not quite a perfect solution, just in my opinion. So let's try putting this together and you'll see exactly why. Now I'm going to find the terminal that's running my Docker Compose, and I'm going to stop it by hitting Control-C. And then I'll flip back over to my code editor, and I'm going to open up my docker compose.yaml file. So in the last solution we looked at, we kind of piggybacked on this existing service to run our tests. So with this new solution, we're going to create a completely second service inside the Docker Compose file, and its sole purpose is going to be to run our tests. So to create a second service, I'm going to add a new line inside of here, and I'm going to add in one level of indentation, and then I'll create the second service with the name of tests, like so. Now remember, in a YAML file, it's extremely important to make sure that you get all of your tabbing and indentation correct. So make sure you've got one indentation right here, right before tests. And then for the second little option we're about to put in here, you should have two indentations. So to build this kind of test service, we're again going to kind of copy some of the configuration you see right here, because we want to, again, build our container using the context in the current directory, using that Docker file, and we're also going to want to set up the same volumes that we had before. However, we do not need to specify any ports this time around because our test suite doesn't make use of any ports whatsoever because there's really no running server inside there. So for tests, I'll specify my build with the context of the current directory and the Docker file of dockerfile.dev. I'll then set up my volumes. Remember, we get a little dash in front of our volumes because this essentially represents an array. I'll set up a volume on node modules, again, to kind of set up a placeholder there and make sure we don't accidentally overwrite that directory or anything like that. And then we'll also map up the current working directory :/app. And then finally, the last thing we need to do is we're going to override the starting command used when this test service is created or the test container is created. So we're going to override that starting command. We're going to make sure that it starts with npm run test rather than the default npm run start. So to override a command inside of a Docker file, we'll specify command, and then we can write out all the different parts of that command in a set of quotes in a little array. So we'll say npm run test. Now when I say little array, this technically right here is not the same type of array that a YAML file array is, like that right there. It's just a slightly different notation. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to save this file. So now whenever we run Docker Compose up, we're going to start up one container that's going to be responsible for hosting our development server, and the second container that is going to be solely responsible for running our tests and rerunning anytime that any file inside of our volumes change. So let's try starting these up now. I'll go back over to my command line, and I'm going to do Docker Compose up, and I'm going to add on a -- build to this as well. Now, technically, we've not made any changes to any of our files, but sometimes when you add on a new service, it can be a little bit finicky. So I'm just going to throw on the -- build. All right, so there we go. So we have our test suite running. You can kind of see the test right there. And then we also see the message saying that we can view our application inside the browser. So we can now flip back over to our code editor and attempt to make a change to our test file. Remember, that's the src directory. We're looking for app.test.js. So I'm going to change this thing by, again, just copy pasting down the it statement. I'll save it. And then if you flip back over to your terminal, you'll see that our test suite has reran, and it now has the two separate tests. All right, so again, this definitely works, but there is a little problem with this approach as well. With the last approach for solving the tests that we looked at, we had to remember the kind of ID of the container. We had to remember the command to execute our test suite inside there. That was the downside to that approach. The downside to this approach is that we are getting all the output from our test suite inside of the kind of login interface of Docker Compose, and we don't have the ability to enter any standard in output to that container. So I can't hit enter to get the test suite to rerun. I can't hit W to get any of the options inside the test suite to appear or anything like that. Now you might be thinking, okay, like Stephen, that's fine. We could always try attaching directly to the container. Well, that's definitely an option. Let's take a quick pause right here, and in the next section, we're going to see if we can reuse that docker attach command that we looked at way long ago to attach directly to this container and add in some custom input by hitting enter or W or whatever it might be to manipulate the test suite. So quick break, and I'll see you in just a minute.